All right, so here's the thing. When a guy like Martin Brundle raises a flag, you pay attention. Because he doesn't do drama for clicks. When he says George Russell should be worried if Max Verstappen hits the market, that's not just noise, that's a warning. And right now, it feels like the walls might be starting to close in on Russell. His contract with Mercedes ends in 2025, not 2028, not 2030, 2025. And while he's been solid, dependable, even brilliant at times, that might not be enough. Not in a world where Max Verstappen, three-time world champion and arguably the most dominant driver of this era, might become available. Now, why would Verstappen even think about leaving Red Bull, you ask? Isn't that the team that's handed him his crown, his car, his empire? Sure, but things are shifting. Red Bull is about to start building their own engines. And while that sounds exciting, it's also risky. You don't just become Mercedes overnight. And if things go sideways, if performance dips, if the car loses that magic, then suddenly the grass might look a lot greener in Brackley. And if Verstappen wants a change, Mercedes is going to move heaven and earth to sign him. That's not speculation. That's the reality of modern Formula One. Because when Max becomes a possibility, everyone else becomes a problem. And George, well, George is the one holding the shortest straw in that equation. Here's where it gets more complicated. Because Mercedes isn't just looking at Verstappen, they've already got a long-term project on the inside. A teenager, an Italian prodigy, Andrea Kimi Antonelli. He's not just a rising star, they're grooming him like royalty. The message coming out of Brackley is loud and clear. Antonelli is the future, which leaves Russell stuck in the middle, between the biggest superstar in the sport and the heir to Mercedes' throne. And if you think that sounds like a dangerous place to be, you're right. Brundle didn't sugarcoat it. He said, plain and simple, if Max becomes available, I'd be very worried if I were George. And you know what? He's not wrong. It doesn't matter how good Russell has been. The politics of Formula One don't always reward loyalty. Sometimes they reward leverage, flash, star power. And Max has all of that in spades. Now throw this into the mix. The Saudis. Yeah, Saudi Arabia. They don't just want to host races anymore. They want to own a team. And this isn't some pipe dream. It's happening. The same public investment fund that bought Newcastle United and flipped the Premier League on its head, they're circling Formula One like sharks. And this isn't just about racing. It's about geopolitics, influence, power, control. We're talking about a scenario where they buy out a team like Haas or Sauber, teams that are financially stretched, and flood it with infinite resources. Imagine this. Engineers from Mercedes and Red Bull walk in. Massive deals are signed overnight. Young drivers arrive with blank checks in their back pockets. It becomes a Formula One team with no financial ceiling. No rules beyond the technical regulations. And with that kind of backing, they can buy whatever they want, whoever they want. Technology, staff, champions. If you're still thinking this is just another oil-rich vanity project, think again. They're not playing for attention. They're playing to own the game, full stop. And the scary part? The ecosystem of Formula One might not be ready for this kind of disruption. We're used to evolution. This would be revolution. A Trojan horse on the grid that looks like a team but acts like a kingdom. Now, zoom out a little. Look at what's happening across the calendar. Traditional tracks, iconic, legendary tracks, are under threat. Imola, the Italian cathedral of speed, could be dropped. Why? Because Italy already has 2 races, and that's not sustainable, says Stefano Domenicali, the F1 CEO. Let that sink in. Not sustainable. As if passion and history are now obstacles. Miami, Las Vegas, Jeddah, Madrid. These places are booming on the calendar. Why? Because they're not just races. They're events. They bring money, celebrities, influencers. But what they don't bring is legacy. And in the process of chasing global expansion, Formula One is quietly ghosting the places that built it. And that's a problem. Because fans don't fall in love with skyscrapers and showbiz. They fall in love with corners like Tamburello, with gravel traps that punish mistakes, with 1980s VHS replays of Senna and Schumacher and Prost. These aren't just circuits, they're stories. And what happens when the sport turns its back on those stories? It loses its soul. Now let's come back to Ferrari. Bahrain should have been a celebration, a statement, a return to form. But instead, it was a gut punch. Leclerc started on the front row and finished off the podium, swallowed by Lando Norris in the closing laps. What was supposed to be a homecoming for the Tifosi became a wake-up call. Fred Vasseur, the team principal, tried to cool things down. "We need patience," he said. "We're improving." But fans have heard that before. Every season begins with promises of silent revolutions and ends with excuses about fractions of a second. And those fractions? They matter. Vasseur says Ferrari is only a few tenths behind. But Red Bull and McLaren, they're pulling away by whole seconds. You can't fight for a championship if you're improving by hundredths while the competition is gaining by tenths. That's not development. That's stagnation. Even Vasseur admitted it. Ferrari is losing 2, 3, 4 tenths per lap on average. That's unacceptable, especially when you've got drivers like Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Top-tier talent, world-class skill. And yet the machinery isn't matching the ambition. And now we get to the real issue. Hamilton. This was supposed to be his comeback tour, his redemption arc, the 7-time champion switching teams, betting on red. But in Bahrain, he started P9, finished P5. Respectable, sure, but this is Lewis Hamilton. This isn't a guy who came to Ferrari to finish 5th. He came to win. And Vasseur, again, tried to soften the blow. Said he appreciated Hamilton's frustration, that it showed passion. But that's not the point. The point is, Hamilton shouldn't be in a car that frustrates him. Not in his first race, not after leaving Mercedes, not when the clock is ticking on his career. Vasseur also said something else. He said if you lose 3 tenths, you drop 7 positions. And he's right. That's how tight the grid is now. But that's also the problem. If Ferrari can't give Hamilton a stable, fast car from the very first race, then they're not just falling behind, they're wasting time. Precious time. And this isn't new. Every year, it's the same cycle. Ferrari launches a new car, talks about evolution, about baby steps. We're improving, they say. But while they move in millimeters, Red Bull is leaping forward in meters. McLaren's catching up. Aston Martin's dangerous. Mercedes might still be in the shadows, but they're not sleeping. And Ferrari? Ferrari is always promising, rarely delivering. So here's where we're at. George Russell is under pressure. Max Verstappen might become a free agent. Mercedes is already grooming his replacement. The Saudis might buy a team and turn the sport on its head. Iconic tracks are vanishing. And Ferrari's stuck in this loop where expectation always outruns execution. You can feel the tension building. Around the drivers, the teams, the very structure of the sport. Formula One is changing, rapidly, dramatically. And not everyone is going to survive that change. The question is, who adapts, who falls, and who rises? So tell me, what do you think? Is George Russell safe? Will Max Verstappen shake up the entire grid? Can Ferrari finally break this cycle? Or is this just the beginning of another long, painful year in red? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I always read them. And if you want to keep riding this wild roller coaster of a season with me, you know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell. This story is just getting started.